Hey everyone, welcome to Aggie Studios Animation Department's training tutorial part 2. So in this video we're going to use the earth illustration that we made back in part 1 and bring that into After Effects, animate it, and we're going to go over position, scale, anchor point, rotation, and opacity, as well as some more complicated things like pre-composing, easy easing, and using the loop expression. These are just like some of the common things that you might end up using when you're animating your own stuff in After Effects. So I'm just going to walk you through like my own workflow using these tools. So let's get started. Alright, so we're going to open up After Effects and we're going to get our Earth Illustrator file. You can import it as a composition. And first of all, you're going to want to make sure that your composition settings are what you want them to be. So for this it's fine that we have the width and height to 2000 by 2000 pixels. But if you have a certain project that asks for like a standard YouTube video sized ratio, then you'd use like 1920 by 1080, that kind of thing. But for now we can just ignore that. The frame rate, typically we use the frame rate of 30 frames per second, and then duration, you can change that afterwards, but for now we'll keep it at like 10 seconds because that's how long I expect the animation to take. Alright, so we got our earth illustration, and we're going to open up the composition here, and it will take us into all of the layers that we had, which is why we had to separate the layers in the illustration part 1 video, so that we can animate each of these layers individually. Like if I want to move the left arm around to wave it, I'm going to need that on a separate layer. So we're going to go over, first let's figure out how we want the earth to come in, because sometimes you might want an animation to like pop in or like transition in some way. So I'll show you some like a very simple way you can get your animation to pop up onto screen. So we can go back into like the main composition, and you can use hotkeys like keyboard shortcuts to bring up certain properties. Like right now I opened up scale using S, or you could just click on the drop downs to see all the properties you have here. So we have scale. I want the scale to start off at 0. That way we don't see any of the illustration. And then I'll drag it out to about like half a second. And then make the scale 110 so that it kind of goes bigger than its actual max. And then finally I'll drag it out to 100 and set it at 100. That way the animation kind of like jumps up and like it has more of like a bounce to it when it moves in. And I'm going to actually shorten this a little bit so that the motion looks smoother and more natural. Yeah, that looks good. And then what you can do is you can click on the property and you can use function F9, and that will create these hourglass looking things on the keyframes, and that's called easy easing. Or you can also click on keyframe assistant and easy ease, and what that does is it actually smooths out your animation so that the motion isn't just like a linear path of motion. It will like smooth out the motion to make it look more natural, and like it goes from like a slow start and ramps up and then slows down. And it just generally you would want to easy ease things so that it would make the animation more smooth. Sometimes you might not need to, or it might change the effect, but generally you would use easy ease. So yeah, we have our earth popping in just like that. If you want to do a different transition, you could have something like the opacity, where you can like have it fly in with position. So I could also show you the opacity one. So we can unclick the scale there, and we can have the opacity. It's pretty much the same process. You start the opacity at 0, and then you drag out the timeline to there. You can have the opacity at 100, and then you can ease it again with F9. You can slow it down and have it just fade in just like that. So you're going to want to be able to know for whatever project you might want to have like a fly-in transition, like moving the position from the top of the screen to down or whatever, or you might want to change the opacity, have it fade in, or you might want to have it like pop in with the scale. It just depends on the project. For this one I could keep it at scale because I like how it looks popping in like that, so we can keep it like that. And then we can go back into our actual layers, where we can start editing them individually. So I want to make the arm wave, the left arm layer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the transform properties, and we have anchor point, position, scale, rotation, opacity, and we want the arm to wave. It's like back and forth. We can use the rotation, and you can use the slider, or you can just input values with your number pad, and it rotates the arm to make it wave. But the one problem here is that it's rotating from the center point, which is this like crosshair looking thing in the middle of the screen. So it doesn't look as natural because the arm where the joint should be is actually moving on the earth. So you're going to actually want to move your anchor point. That's what this anchor point feature is for, so that you don't have to have that problem. So you can either change the values of the anchor point like this, and it moves the object towards that center anchor point, or you could use Y on your keyboard to pull up the anchor point pan behind tool, and you can click on the anchor point and you can drag it over to where this arm joint is. So I can move it right there. And then now when I click on rotation, it rotates at the joint, so that it looks more like a natural waving movement. Okay, so we're going to start changing the keyframes for that to make the arm wave. So I'm going to set a keyframe by clicking on the stopwatch. And then I could move it back a little bit about there, and I can move it to 1 second and move the keyframe to about there, and then we could preview that. Yeah, the motion looks good. And then you can ease it by clicking on it, pressing F9, and then we have half of the wave. And then we also want the arm to wave back. So what you can do is you can move forward another second, and then you can copy the frame so that it waves back like that. Or because this is like a repetitive motion, you don't want to just like copy the keyframe over and over and over again, because that'd be very tedious, and you want to save time and be efficient. So what you can do is use the expressions tool in After Effects and the loop expression, and it can make your process even more quicker, and you won't have to waste time just copy and pasting keyframes over and over again. So you can hold your Alt key on your keyboard, and you can press on the stopwatch icon, and that will open up your expressions. And this is where you can like use like a bunch of different expressions to do different things. I won't go into all of them, obviously there's like a whole bunch of them, and you can like find more tutorials online on how to use each of the expressions. For this one we're going to use the loop expression. We're going to use loop out ping pong. So you just type in loop out parentheses and then quotation mark ping pong, and then you just click off of it. And what that does is it just ping pongs, like it goes back and forth between your 2 frames that you have on the rotation keyframes. So if you preview it, it'll just wave the arm back and forth. It goes back and forth between those 2 keyframes. So that way you don't have to just keep on copying and pasting keyframes over and over again. It just makes your process easier. And yeah, now we have our Earth waving back and forth, pretty much for all eternity, until like the timeline ends, and then it just starts over again. Right, so now that we have the arm waving, you can add some other effects to animate your Earth or your illustration further. What else should we do? We can show, we can change, we can have the Earth like bobbing up and down, like it's in space. And for that, I might actually like not want legs then. So it's just like a floating Earth basically. So we can, if we want to make the Earth float up and down, we can do a similar thing like what we did with the wave. It would just be a back and forth motion, except this time we use the position expression, or the position tool using the loop out ping pong expression. So what we do is we can use the pre-compose feature, which allows you to just pick up all these layers, and then you can press Ctrl-Shift-C, and then you can name it if you want, Earth, body, and then it like groups them into a folder, and you can click on that. Pre-composition. And then it opens up all those layers in a new smaller like composition where you only need to see those specific layers, and that way you can change the properties of that whole composition, but only those properties and not affect anything else. And it just makes it easier, and it can help keep you more organized, and that way you won't have to like apply the expression to each of those individual layers if you want to just move it all as a group. So I want to move the Earth, body and arms like all by itself, but not move the clouds because I want to move those separately. So like now that we have this pre-composition, we can move the Earth around, and we can use P to bring up the position tool, and then we can have it bob up and down like it's floating in space. So we could set a keyframe at 0, 0, and we can drop it down a little bit, and then we can move it to about 1 second, and then we can move it upwards, and then you can click on position again and ease it, so it just moves up just like that. And then to loop it, we'll use the loop out expression, loop out, parentheses, quotation mark, ping pong, and then it's just going to have it float up and down just like that. Just loop it, and that makes it a lot easier instead of having to copy and paste keyframes. Then we're going to want to do a similar thing with the clouds, but I kind of want them to move slightly differently than the Earth. So we're going to bring up position again, we can move them down about here, and then we can move them upwards right there. Maybe we'll move this a little bit. Okay, and then we're gonna ease it. And it just moves slightly. And you can have it move a little bit more. And then you can click on Alt on the stopwatch to bring up that. You can loop out, parentheses, ping pong. There you go. You have the cloud and the rest of the body of the Earth moving independently, and then you have like the arm waving. And yeah, that's pretty much all you have to do for that. And then you you also have like the main composition where you have the illustration pop in, and then you have it animate. And then if you want to do like a similar thing and have it pop out, then all you have to do is just use the scale again. You can drag it about halfway and change this value to 100 and change this value to 0, and then it pops out. And if you want your composition to be shorter, then you drag this blue, like the gray bar with blue on the ends on it, to where the composition ends, and then it will only loop to there. And then you can use Control-Shift-X to cut or to trim your composition to the work area, which is basically like the area between those two blue bars there. And now the composition will last for like about like 5.5 seconds. And then there you go. You just have this animation that goes, pops in, it waves, it floats up and down, and then it pops back out. And then if you want to, you can also add text. Typography is something that you might also end up doing, and the composition closed on me. Alright everyone, After Effects crashed on me while I was making that video. So we are going to open up After Effects again, and this is actually an important teaching moment because sometimes After Effects will crash randomly because it handles a lot of big files, and sometimes your computer might not be powerful enough to handle that. So that is something that you're going to want to have to plan ahead for. You can go into project settings, actually not project settings, you can go into preferences, and you can go to autosave, and you can adjust like the amount of time, or the amount of times it autosaves, like every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes, but like the more you have it saved, you know, the more memory it's going to take up. But that will also mean that you get more versions of your project. So yeah, it sucks when that happens. So you kind of just have to remember to save often. But yeah. Anyways, let's open up our Earth composition again. So it didn't save my progress from like the animation that I made, but I can go ahead and remake the animation, and I'll get back to you guys and show you how you can add text. Alright, so we're back at where we started, and we'll press Control S to save. Remember to save, not let it crash again. So we can just call this Earth Animation. Then we're gonna preview that. We just have the Earth floating and waving, popping in and out. Nice. Then if you want to add text, you can go ahead and press Control T to open up our text box tool, and then you can start typing. What should we call this? Call it far out. I guess that's more like alien themed. You can just call it Welcome to Earth! Exclamation mark. You can center align that to the comp, bring it down a little bit, color to white. And the font I'm using by default is Gilroy Extra Bold. That's one of the fonts that we use at the studio. I think we have a folder where you can get all those fonts, so you won't have to worry about finding those. It should be in the animation library folder. And then we can change the size of the font. Less than that. There you go. Welcome to Earth. And it's, you know, it's just like a little text that you can add. You can have the text move with the Earth. I didn't put this in the things to do agenda, but this is something extra that you can learn. If you want something to a layer to move with another layer that's already animated, you can use the Pick Whip Parent tool. So you can click on this layer and there's this like spirally thing, Parent Pick Whip, and you can drag it to Earth Body. And now this text layer is going to move and copy the animation of the Earth layer. So you see, it's going to move up and down, same as the Earth layer is moving up and down. And yeah, but maybe I don't want it to come off screen, so I could also animate the position independently, so we can have it stay on screen. So we can have another keyframe there, move this one, let's see, you might not need to use the Parent Pick Whip actually, so you can take that off and put this right there. Welcome to Earth. That's an important thing to think about. If your artwork goes like off of the canvas, your animation goes like out of the bounds of whatever canvas you're working on, and you don't want it to be cut off because you want to put it in like an actual like 1920 by 1080 video to like overlay over, you know, like one of the live videos that one of our videographers are going to shoot, then you're not going to want it to be cut off, obviously. So you might want to make the canvas size bigger, so you can actually you can go to composition settings, you can change the width to like 23, and then change the height as well to 23, so that it's a bigger composition. And yeah, we could probably have this parented. You can grab the Parent Pick Whip and parent it to Earth Body, and change the comp settings 2300 by 2300, and that way it doesn't go out of bounds of your composition. And there we go. We could also have the text come in at like a different time than the Earth composition. So, you know, you just like make these like artistic decisions like as you go, as you're animating. So like as you preview and see like, I think this would look better if I did this instead. That's basically how the workflow process would go. So you can have the Earth come in first, and then you can have the Earth, the Welcome to Earth text pop in. So I'm gonna cut that, Control X, and bring it into this comp. Let's see. Maybe I don't want the text to move with the Earth and just have it be static. So I don't put the text in yet. Once the Earth pops in, then we can have the Welcome to Earth text. So we can do the same thing we did with the scale for that one. We can actually just copy the scale keyframes here and then bring it to Welcome to Earth, and then it pops in the same fashion as the Earth popped in. And then we're going to press Control S to save again. And yeah, we just have them popping in one after another. drag this to have the timing be different. Welcome to Earth. Let's see. Yeah. You know, generally I would also experiment with this a bit more to see, like, maybe I want the composition to look a bit different than this, or I don't want like the text to go so close to the Earth as it bobs down. But for the purposes of, like, you know, a training tutorial, we don't really need to go that much into that. So I'll just show you guys how to actually first, we can copy the scale out and have this pop out with the Earth like that. So we can just go ahead and export this video now. Export the animation. So you can pull up Control M to pull up your render queue. So that's like a render queue that you have to export the video as like an MP4, AVI, MOV, like a video like format that you can just watch. So you can't like watch an After Effects AEP file. So you'd export it, and you know, that's how you hand it over to the editor, or videographer, or whoever is gonna be using your animation for the video. So you can use Control M to pick up the render queue, or you can use Control Shift M, or go to Composition, add to Adobe Media Encoder queue, or yeah, Control Alt M. And that basically, using the Adobe Media Encoder queue just allows you to work in After Effects and not have to worry about something rendering at the same time. Like, it uses like a separate application. But if you use the render queue, then you won't be able to work in After Effects while it's rendering. But for this video, I'll just use the render queue. If you wanted to export with a transparent background and not like a black background, all you have to do is you go to Output Module Lossless, Channels, you go to RGB plus alpha. The plus alpha thing is basically what makes it transparent, if you didn't have like a background. So you can change the format. I'll change it to a QuickTime, since that's like a smaller format, because if you use the AVI with the RGB plus alpha, it's going to make like a huge file, and it's just going to take forever. So this makes it a bit smaller. And then you don't have to change any of the other settings. You just press OK. You can change the name or where you want it to save to. So I'll just save it to the training video folder. I'll just call it Earth Animation. Welcome to Earth Animation. I'm not going to worry too much about naming the files now, but for your purposes, it might be easier to name them like in a more systematic way, so that it's easier on whoever you're handing the files over to, and that kind of thing. Or you can name them by like draft number. You can press save, render, and then it's just gonna like show you the preview as it's loading, and you just wait for it to load. Sometimes the render queue can take a while depending on the size of your video. Like when I was rendering like the video I made for part 1 of this training, like it took, you know, hours, because it's like a much longer video. So you just want to have patience, I guess. But this one was like a very quick 10-second video, so it's already done. And then it's done, and it should be outputting to my folder, the training video, and then I have it here. And you can preview it on your laptop, or you can upload it to a drive or share the link to whoever needs the file, and you're done. So yeah, that's how you make an animation in After Effects. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for all things Aggie.